For decades, the Mac has been the platform of choice for artists and designers, creating fertile ground for indie developers to build compelling alternatives to the flagship apps. And nowhere is that choice more evident than in the photo post-processing scene, where Mac users have access to an impressive catalogue of apps from boutique coding houses. While these apps can't compete with the budgets and developer teams of companies like Adobe, they often deliver a range of tools that combine innovation with simplicity. And so it is with Nitro by Gentleman Coders, an app developed by one of the core team members responsible for the late lamented Aperture. This app offers many of the features of Lightroom, but without the Adobe bloat and at a greatly reduced price point. It's had a heap of updates since I last reviewed it over 18 months ago, and I thought it was high time I looked again. Is it now a viable Lightroom alternative or still a disappointing detour? Okay guys, housekeeping first. This video isn't sponsored by anyone other than my long-suffering wife. I am not a member of this developer's affiliate scheme or indeed any affiliate scheme. I didn't get sent a serial number for this app. There is a 7-day trial version, but I paid for a month's subscription to give it a full and complete test. I've reviewed heaps of photography apps on this channel, but I think it's fair to say that my original review of Nitro back in April 2024 caused something of the most spirited correspondence. Nick Batt, the developer of Nitro and its sister app Raw Power, has a vocal and supportive customer base, some of whom I've bumped into on various web forums and who gently encouraged me to look again at the app. And with some big new features in this app in the 2025.9 release, I decided to pony up for a month's use and find out what kind of shape it was in now. So here's the TLDR. Nitro is what happens when someone who actually likes photography builds a Lightroom alternative for the Mac. No surprise there, the developer was one of the blokes that made Aperture for Apple after all. It's $99 once. No upsells, no nonsense. If you're desperate to pay monthly for it, you can get it on subscription in the App Store for $5 a month, and that includes access to the iPhone and iPad version. It's fast, clean, supports more RAW formats than Apple can be bothered with, and now has a cleaner RAW editing engine and with a well-considered workflow. With new AI tools and an expanded and overhauled RAW engine, it's gone from an ambitious side project to a credible everyday editor. Interface design is often overlooked in indie apps, and it's usually the reason an otherwise decent RAW editor ends up being a pain in the arse to use. And the good news on that front is that Nitro has one of the best designed and most configurable interfaces of all of the indie apps. Let me walk you through it. Well, here's the main interface of Nitro, and it is a very configurable application, actually. Obviously, you've got the standard metaphors here with your thumbnails, the main portion of the screen, and your file browser over on the left. You've got quick filtering option up here, so you can just get your better photos by star or pics. You can also lock or unlock the sidebar. So if you prefer it to not be there, you can deselect it and then re-enable it manually and then lock it in place. One thing they did get right, and for the love of God, DxO, please pay attention. If I click this button here, I can see all of the subfolder contents beneath that folder. So if I go into this one, I'll still see all the files. That's how easy it is, DxO. Just a little button, enable it or disable it, and everybody's happy. So at the moment, I am viewing the file manager. So these are the images on my main photo drive. I just browse to it in the file manager. Here they all are. And you can also, if you want, view the Apple Photos library as well. To do that, you just go up to the File menu here and say New Photo Library Workflow window, and a new tab will open. It will initialize the Photos library, and after a few seconds, up come all of your images, and you will see that you have your albums as they exist in Apple Photos, and you have access to all the different media types and any EXIF data that you've added to them, such as star ratings. So it's a very flexible little system. So we've also got this other filtering option up here. Here's the quick filter, which is just star picks and that. But you've got a slightly more granular version here where you can filter by file type, for instance, or I can just show those photos that I have edited. In terms of the thumbnails themselves, you can just go to a straight kind of square Instagram style look, as opposed to the kind of masonry look where you get the proper orientations of everything if you prefer, and you can change the size of the thumbnails quickly and easily too. It's fast and clean, and I have no real complaints about it. It's also worth pointing out that Nitro has one of the most, if not the most, comprehensive EXIF and metadata displays I've ever used. From the control bar on the right side of the screen, you can trigger an info screen with a mini-map and basic EXIF, a full-size EXIF screen with a fully comprehensive EXIF list, and a slimline EXIF palette with search capabilities. You certainly couldn't complain that you're getting insufficient access to metadata. But of course, a photo app can have a beautiful, slick and modern-looking interface and still royally suck when it comes to, editing photos. This was exactly the bit that drove me mad last time I looked at this app. Last time around, I found the mechanics of the slider behavior, literally the way you slide them, to be erratic and peculiar, and I'm pleased to report that weirdness is now, thankfully, gone. Not only is it gone, but these sliders have a precision mode. Click and hold on a slider and move the mouse above and below that line, and you can dial in the precise setting you want with great accuracy. Previously, I also had an issue with the overall functionality of several of the sliders, in particular, the roll-off or aggressiveness of the effects, and I'm happy to say that's fixed now too. Well, here is the interface for the editor section of Nitro, and I have to say, it's grown on me. There is a weird black line extending across the screen here. I don't know if it's going to be picked up when this video is uploaded to YouTube and compressed. I thought there was something going on with my display, but it's not. It's literally just in this app. So that's a bit weird. As you can see, we've got all the tools situated over on the right-hand side of the screen here, and it's very visually pleasing and accessible. We've got the metadata up in the top section there, so we can see this is an iPhone photograph that I took. We've got a nice histogram here, which you can split into the various color channels if you wish. And then we've got the bulk of the tools on the screen here, which you can scroll up and down. I'm not going to go into much detail on these because God alone knows they're going to be very familiar to you guys. We're just going to look at the points of difference from all the other apps. We all know how shadow and highlights work. That being said, one of the issues I had in the past with this app was the aggressiveness of the sliders and the roll-off, how the curve is on those sliders, and also the mechanics of the sliders and the way they worked, which I didn't like at all. And I'm pleased to say that in the 18 or so months, actually probably nearer 20 months since I reviewed this app last, that's all been fixed, and it's actually really nice to use now. If I grab this highlight slider, let's say we want to bring back a bit more detail in the sky, and I just bring this down, you can see we've got a very nice, smooth roll-off of the highlights there. Now, I'm dragging that at full strength. One of the features of this app is that you can move the mouse pointer above or below that slider line and go into a super accurate mode. So if I move the mouse pointer down, you can see it's turned from magenta to green, and now it's doing really small little changes. That's a nice feature. Incidentally, if you are recovering the highlights, Then there's a special slider at the bottom of the screen here called Recovery, which is a specialized tool which just targets the very brightest portions of the image right up the top end of the dynamic range. And the developer suggests you use these two sliders, the highlights and the recovery, in concert with each other to kind of balance them out and arrive at a result that is pleasing to you. Underneath the tool section, we've got a couple of interesting sliders here, Deepen and Lighten. And these are effectively smart lighting tools. They use shadows and the highlights, but in a slightly cleverer way. I found they worked in a similar way to the way the exposure slider works in Apple Photos, actually, which is a super sophisticated tool. And I really love the results you get from these. If I bring the deepen slider up, you can see we're increasing the contrast there. You can see the histogram kind of nesting in slightly. And if I bring up lighten, you can see we've got kind of intelligent, subtle improvement in lighting levels across the image. I mentioned that the developer had toned down the aggressiveness of the sliders, and that was very apparent to me when I tested the detail sliders here, clarity and sharpen, which are now much more subtle than they used to be and enable you to create a really natural looking edit. Let me bring up the clarity slider on this, and you can see that it's doing a great job of adding a bit of punch to those edges in that brick wall there. And ditto was sharpened for the finer detail in the image. If you want to go a bit old school, you can, of course, use a curves adjustment, a little bit of contrast with your standard little S-curve, just bringing down the bottom end of the dynamic range there and boosting the top end. I've also got a really nice little HSL tool here, hue, saturation, and luminance. So you can precisely target the colors in the image, tweak the hue range, desaturate them if you wish, or bring up the light levels. And if you want them to be more aggressive, you've got a range tool here, which just boosts that level even further. Now, one sticking point with Nitro for me in previous iterations was lens profiles, or the complete lack of them. If you're coming from an app like Lightroom or Capture One, then you've been spoiled, because those apps come with a huge number of lens profiles specifically built for those apps, which correct for any deficiencies in curvature and vignetting and that kind of stuff. You could fix all that stuff in Nitro, but you had to do it manually. And in this latest version, there's a new feature in here which the developer calls RAW Bridge. It's unique to the app. It uses Apple's improved RAW decoding pipeline, and it works with Fujifilm compressed, Nikon HE, and the newer Olympus RAW files. It means they decode better, you get better color, better highlight recovery, fewer artifacts, and you get automatic lens correction. Yes, that's right. Automatic lens correction in Nitro. It's awesome. Now, if you've previously done some lens corrections to your photographs in Nitro, then you have to kick those into touch. And when you go to the lens profile, there's an option to remove those. So you've got to tweak them yourself. So basically, you've got three situations. You've got a RAW that has lens metadata and you haven't touched the corrections. In that case, Nitro will automatically apply the new RAW Bridge correction to it, and you don't have to do anything. Situation two, the RAW has lens metadata and you previously adjusted that correction manually. You'll get a little button on there under the histogram and you can update the lens correction. And the third situation is when the RAW doesn't have any lens metadata. Nitro can't fix what it doesn't know, and you'll just have to use the old school manual lens correction. And this particular photo is a compressed Fuji RAW file, and that means, yes, I've got automatic lens correction, which is really awesome. If I click on the lens option here, you can see these sliders are grayed out because it knows the profile for this lens and it's automatically fixed it. Since this is quite a big deal, it's great to hear that the developer will be adding more formats and lens profiles out over the years as he rolls out and iterates this application. Now, I mentioned there were some other tabs lurking under the histogram here, and if I go into this option here, you can see we've got a few here. One of the best of these is this recover highlights option, which reaches into the far ends of the raw file, up the top end of the dynamic range, and sees if it can pull back data that you wouldn't get using the regular demosaicing process. So if you look at the histogram in this image, you can see we have portion of the dynamic range which is blown out. We've got blown out. So this white area, the clouds up here, is gone. There's no data there. And I can use this recovery tool to bring them back. If I pull that in slowly, keep your eye on that histogram, you can see we have recovered all of the highlights, and we now have a nicely balanced histogram with no blown out portions of the sky at all. And then you click done, and you can then go back into the regular edit screen and make your regular tweaks. You can still bring the highlights down further if you want. It's a completely different tool, and you can tweak, get that contrast in there, make any other changes you want. But going back to that tool, you can also see we've got auto enhance in here, regular kind of thing. Sometimes a useful starting point for any edits, just click the button. It will weigh up the situation in the photograph, use a little bit of inside knowledge and enhance accordingly. So it brought up the shadows there, dropped the highlights slightly. And if you're happy with what it's done, you can click the done button and then go back into the edit and build on those edits. At this stage in the game, there's nothing even close to Lightroom's generative fill. It's just your old school dust spot removal with the clone tool here, the spot and line removal. Now, there is actually one area of Nitro where there is a little bit of AI enabled, and that is in the masking tab. So I'm going to open another image to showcase that. Here is our test image. If I go into the masking tool here, you can see we've got two AI options. We've got subject mask and background mask. Let's try the subject mask, and we'll call this boat. Click save. And as you can see, it's done an okay job. It's not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a good starting point. And you can, of course, just go in with the brush tool and tweak that. And the good news on that front is that it uses edge detection. So, for instance, you can see it's missed out the flag here at the rear of the boat. If I bring the brush over here, click on it and start painting, you can see it's added it quite nicely and none of the sky behind it. I've said it before on many reviews of RAW editors I've uploaded to this little channel, and I'll say it again. It doesn't matter how many fancy tools an app has. Sometimes they just don't deliver the goods for your RAW files. That was the case with the previous version of Nitro, but I'm pleased to say that after having used this app near exclusively for a month, I was getting solid and consistent results from my edits. I was particularly impressed with the RAW tuning tool, which, dare I say, gives DxO Photo Labs lens correction a bit of a run for its money. The RAW sharpening in particular applies a beautiful, subtle crispness to an image that makes the detail more visible, but not at the extent of obvious edges or ugly contrast levels. Let's start with what works. When it comes to the feature set in Nitro 2025.09, you get an impressive amount for your hard-earned cash. The asset management is excellent, enables you to switch between Apple Photos and File Manager libraries with ease. Asset management itself is fast and efficient, and there are all the basic capabilities you'd expect, such as star ratings and color flags, along with welcome features such as a subfolder toggle for the File Manager and Smart Albums. Finding images is still pretty primitive though, and search remains far too reliant on filtering. Access to EXIF Metadata, as I mentioned, is comprehensive and is indeed the best I've used in any app. The developers have gone out of their way to include lens and RAW support for cameras that Apple choose not to. That a tiny independent coder can provide wider support for cameras than Apple, a multi-trillion-dollar company that made $93 billion in profit in 2024 alone, is utterly shameful. The RAW sharpen and contrast tools are standouts for me, and I really like the smart lighting sliders deepen and lighten, which enable you to quickly bring a raw image up to a baseline edit in just a couple of clicks. When it comes to negatives, there's a lot less to complain about than there was 18 months ago. The roll-off and aggressiveness of the sliders has been massively improved since I last looked at the app. The only part of the interface I found clunky was scrolling the whole edit panel up and down. The AI keywording tool is absolutely useless, and I'd suggest pairing it with an open source AI image tagger such as Llama Vision in order to get vastly more meaningful results. There's some very basic AI masking in the app, which isn't great. While you can finesse it using a brush and chroma and luma adjustments, it's just not in the same league as the trio of bigger raw editors. And there are some bugs that manifest occasionally, such as disappearing brushes in the masking tool, broken before and after functionality, that weird black line across the top of the app, and on the Apple Intel version, a persistent issue loading images that resulted in a weird error loading adjustment data alert. While this app supports more cameras than Photomator, it obviously doesn't get close to something like Lightroom in terms of support. So do check the website to see if your gear's on the list. So a mixed bag, but plenty of promise. I've genuinely enjoyed revisiting Nitro and seeing how far it's come. The previous version felt very much like a work in progress, but I'm happy to say that the Nitro version I review, 2025.09, is a nicely polished and far more fully featured app. Is it as good as Photolab, Capture One, or Lightroom? No, definitely not. But it's not a million miles off. It's improving on a monthly basis, and it's cheaper than the big league RAW editors, particularly in the long term. Photographers are inevitably also geeks, and the software we use hits those nerdy pleasure centers with tools designed to delight and distract us. And while generative removal tools, highly granular AI masking, and automated editing look great on the old marketing website, it's the basics that actually make the difference between a good and a bad edit. And it's the basics that Nick Batt has concentrated on his app, while also adding tools that add real value to real photographers, tools that will improve your edits, not just pad out a change log. Given that you can purchase this app for an actual lifetime single purchase price of $100 and get the iOS, iPhone, or iPad versions into the bargain, Nitro 2025 feels less like a gamble and more like a quietly excellent investment in your photography. And that will do us for this look at Nitro by Gentleman Coders. If you've taken this app for a spin, would you consider replacing an Adobe subscription with something like this? Do let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you got value from it, then do consider subscribing to my channel for more photo, video, and drone-related content from me. Till the next time, guys. Ta-ta.